And hello again, and here we are looking at my Merch 131 custom built Softail Harley, which is sitting at the back of my house in a conservatory, and it's not moved for nearly a year. And at the beginning of the year I did make a little video about the changes I want to make to this bike this year, and so far it's sat here and I've done absolutely nothing to it. So it's now mid-July, it's about time I put my finger out and got some work done on the bike. And those changes can be broken down into three parts. The first one is the riding position, because right now it's bloody uncomfortable. And what I want to do is bring the pegs back a wee bit and the handlebars back a wee bit. And the second change I want to make is to the electronics, and in particular the idiot lights and switches and of course the speedo, because right now it's not very easy to see and it doesn't work very well. And in its place I want to get a handlebar mounted combined tacho and speedo, so therefore it means changing the wiring somewhat around the bike. And the last change I want to make is to do something about the lack of ground clearance, particularly at the back end. I mean, here we've got hardly anything at all. And so to do that, I need to remove the whole back end and modify the mounts on the swing arm that connect it to the shocks, which live beneath the gearbox. But first of all, let's start off with something a bit easier, which is changing the handlebar mounts and the footrests. And to achieve that, I've got to remove these four controls and remake the mounting plates such that the pegs and these controls are further back. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so I've had a rethink, and we decided to save some money and save some time by reusing these four control plates, because what we can do is re-drill the mounting holes this way and chop off this bit on both that one and this one. So these now have been marked out and punched, and now it's time to do some hole drilling. So the next step then is to drill a pilot hole in here, followed by the larger 10mm hole. And now here we are, back home again, and I've just been reassembling these four controls and giving them a quick polish, because it's a lot easier to do it off the bike than on the bike. And as you may be able to see, the mounting plates have now been cut and re-drilled, profiled at the back, so hopefully that should bring these pegs about an inch further back and a little bit lower than they were before. And so now I've just got to put these back on the bike. And there they are, back on the bike. Looks okay, fitted okay, so I'm happy with that. And so with that done, it's now time to move on to move the handlebars back by making some new risers. So I finally got these covers off, thank God, and had to use a heat gun to get the glue softened up to get those off. That's great. So the next step is to unbolt these and take the bars off, then I can remove these risers. But I do have to be careful, because there's a wire here that runs through the inside of the bolt that holds this riser in place, and that in turn runs through the handlebars and powers the bar end indicator, so I don't want to damage that. So I'll have to be careful when I take off this and work out where the wires actually go. So they're unbolted now. Let's just remove that second one, and before I progress, I'll just put a little towel here to protect the paintwork, just in case this thing starts to flop around and maybe it falls, whatever. And I want to be really careful now, because I'm not sure where the wires go. There it is there, look, there's a wire. And let's just see where that comes from. Oh, okay. And we see here there's a little hole in the bottom of the bar that's been drilled, and the wires actually split as expected. One goes left, one goes right. Now what I'm hoping to see is some kind of connector, but sadly there doesn't seem to be one. So let's just cut the wire round about there. I can always reconnect it if need be. So that's that done, and now that can be threaded down through the centre. I guess the socket head that holds this in place has been drilled all the way through to allow that wire to follow through. So that's a pretty nice bit of work there from the guys who helped me wire up the bike about 15 years ago. And there's the risers removed, and I don't know if you can see here, but the top yoke's been machined and profiled like this, and the problem I've got is that this profile's been machined to match a round riser, just like this one, all nice and neat. But I was planning to fit a squared off riser which would come up and pull back a wee bit to give me a more comfortable stance on the bike, so I'm not sure that's going to work, because it's going to look a bit odd. Anyway, there's a bit of a problem, and I'm sure we'll work something out. Okay, so here we have my highly untechnical drawing of the kind of riser I want to make. Square section and 1 inch hole there for the bars, and the not throw back but pull back.
That was cut out of that.
That was cut out of that, yeah. Thank you. is about an inch back, because that's what I want on the bike. I want to pull out those bars back about an inch. So that's my kind of, well, untechnical drawing that I gave to Jeff, and so far he's been quite busy, and he's made these two big chunky things. I think they're in, what was it, 1 1/4 inch?
Inch and a quarter.
Inch and a quarter.
32 mil.
Yeah.
I've milled them too. They look a little bit better.
Okay, so Jeff so far has maybe these. He's already made the tops, drilled them, and recessed the socket heads. Counterboards, yeah. And next step is to bolt everything together and drill the 1 inch hole that goes in here. And so the next step is we've put some 2 mil washers in between the top and the bottom of these risers, and that's because we need to give some clearance for the bar, so that when it clamps up the bars nice and tight. You can't just use this and then stick a 1 inch hole in it, because it won't clamp up very well, or it may not anyway.
Unless the bars are
bigger than 1 inch, obviously.
Bigger than 1 inch, and then it's not going to sit in the...
But with this 2 mil gap here before we start to bore, when it's finished then, there's plenty of room there for it to clamp down and grip the bars nice and tight. So that's one done. This one now needs its washers, and then we can start to bore out these holes. Okay, so here we are back on the miller, and we're finally drilling the 1 inch hole into my new risers.
Yeah, this is a 7/8 cutter. I've managed to get it as central as possible.
Yeah.
To within 1/2 mil.
With the little spaces on either side. So
and I'll measure it once it's out, and then when I put the inch one through, I can finally adjust it to get it eventually to within the ballpark.
And once that's done, it's still not finished, because we're going to do some shaping onto the corners. The reason being that the bike's got quite rounded off edges to the yokes, so putting a very angular, harsh angles from the risers on the yokes will look a bit odd. So instead, I won't get too close, but we're going to round off the edges so it matches up with the style of the so it matches up with the style of the yokes, and maybe even put some flutes on it. I'm not sure yet. Right, great stuff. I'll leave you to it while I go off and drink some more tea. And hello again, and here we are back in my conservatory at the back of the house, where I'm doing a quick test fit of this new bracket which holds the Speedo Taco unit to these risers, which we made a while ago. And thankfully it seems to fit okay. I got my measurements right, and the holes are spot on when it comes to fitting it back on the bike and fitting the risers to the yokes. And now here we are with the bracket. It's now the next day. I've taken it off the bike so that I can slot these holes here to move back the bracket on the risers and get it just right. But the more I think about it, the more I think, you know, this bracket isn't quite right yet. It's too kind of crude, it's too blocky. To see that at the front of the bike kind of breaks up the lines of the risers. It just doesn't look quite right. So I had a little think, and I made myself a little paper template, which is here. And I think what I'm going to do, let me just turn it round, because it should go like this, is I think I need to cut out this slot here, this area here, and also there, to sort of open it up, and that would then allow the risers to be seen a bit more, and I think it would just look a lot better. And now here we are, an hour or two later, and it's almost finished. I've still got to finish off the edges, make them a bit more neat and tidy, but yeah, it doesn't look too bad. And so now I'm going to try it on the bike and decide whether I actually like it or not. And now here's that modified bracket back on the bike for yet another test fit. Looks okay, but these slotted holes need a bit more work, because as you can see, hopefully, this edge of the bracket isn't quite yet aligned with the corner of the riser. Only by about 1 millimetre, but that makes quite a big difference. So I've just got to file this down 1 more mil to widen the slot, and then hopefully everything should look a lot better and be spot on. And once that's done, I can then polish all this along with the risers and get the whole damn thing back on the bike for the last time. And now here are the risers in its bracket, all polished, and I must say it took many, many hours to get to that point, and I'm glad it's now over and done with. So now let's get that back on the bike and see how it looks. And here they are back on the bike at last, and I must say they do look a lot better, a lot more integrated now that they've been polished, so I'm pretty happy with that. And with that done, it's now time to move on to the electrics. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of wires here to sort out and to make sure they're all nice and neat on the bike. But also I've got to change a few more things as well, which brings me to these Kellerman bar end indicators, which I want to get rid of for two reasons. First of all, they're quite wide and they make the whole bike about 6 inches wider than it needs to be. And the second reason is because the style of them doesn't really fit in with the rest of the bike. That said, when I bought them back in about 2000, there wasn't much of a choice out there, so these would have to do. But these days, there's plenty of choice out there, and ones that have caught my eye are made by a German company, Multi-Gadget, and they're very small, about 20mm in depth, and I think they'll work really well on this bike. But I've not seen any yet, so I'm waiting for my local bike shop to get some in, and we'll see what I think of them. And until they arrive, along with some other bits and bobs, I can't really carry on and sort out the wiring, because I need all the wires on the bike before I can work out where they're all going to go. So that'll have to wait. And here we are now at the local bike shop, and the bike's all set up. So I'm just going to remove all these nuts and bolts and get this off the bike, swing them off the bike, and then we'll see what happens next. And that's the wheel out of the bike, and before I can continue and get the swing arm out, I've got to remove the battery because it lives on the swing arm on this particular bike. It's a bit fiddly, but that's next. Phew, so there's the battery out. That was really fiddly, and actually I'm thinking of changing it to a more modern lithium ion battery because it'd be a lot smaller, a lot lighter, and in theory they retain the charge a lot longer. Ta-da! Yeah. Right, so we didn't know this, but we had to take the chain off to get this thing off. So that's done. We can now slide it off, and it's bloody heavy, isn't it? It's feel the weight of that, Tim.
Jeez, that is heavy.
Yeah.
Very heavy. It's
Yeah.
nearly as heavy as a normal bike.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a standard Harley Softail swing arm's about £40. I suspect that's not far off that. Anyway, that's done. Take it away now, and let's have a look at this here. Upside down. And what I'm going to do is move that mount back about 20mm. So I'll cut a piece out of here, load it back on again, and in theory that should give me almost 2 inches more ground clearance, in theory. So let's go and see. So Jeff, here we are in your workshop again. You made a starring role in one of my other videos when you made me a stainless steel battery box for my Guzzi.
Like me dirty overall.
Yeah. You look very appealing. And what you're going to do now is, as I say, we're going to move this mount back 20mm. That's the starting point, and then load it back on again. So you've now ground off all that old weld,
Yeah.
prepped it all, and then over here, I won't touch it, it might still be quite warm.
This will be, that won't be.
You cut off 20mm,
20
ground it
mil.
all back, nice and straight and smooth, and I'm going to weld that on there. Yeah. Now, we did have a bit of an issue because this bit here might stop you from welding on the underside. But if that's the case, we can cut off this little bit here, maybe about 10mm, as long as we keep the holes there, because they're required. Yeah, so just taking off some powder coat to give a good bench when it starts to weld. So now it really does need to be powder coated again.
Look like you're going to go again, close your eyes. Beautiful.
Right, so you now cut off this little piece here because now you can access this little weld. But
Yeah.
first, of course, you'll clean up the cut you just made. So I'll stand
Sure
back
will.
and let you do it. Good. Okay, so we've done our way. So that's now welded on. Looks fantastic, all level and as it should be. Slight recess there, it's not a problem.
Second run.
Okay, second run on the weld.
There we go.
There we go. Are we done?
Sorted. Now, do you want this weld cutting back in, or are you okay?
Yeah, you can just do a little bit because of yeah. Hang on, let me.
That gives you your
Okay,
full.
so we're just rounding that off now because there's a bit of a weld around the edge, just to make sure it'll.
Yeah, so
sit
you've got your
nice
full
and tight.
diameter then.
Yeah, great. Okay, it's almost done now. Just one little final touch, rounding off this area here where the chain was rubbing against the edge of this bracket. The bike originally was belt drive, so it wasn't really an issue, but now changed to chain drive. Just sometimes it just rubs on there, so we've just rounded it off, and hopefully it won't rub anymore. But we'll see. So here we are back at Tim's workshop again, and we're doing a test fit of this modified swing arm to see whether it actually fits on the bike and everything lines up okay. And it kind of works, but not quite. I have got a problem, which I thought I might have, but I thought I might also just get away with it, but I haven't. Right, yeah, so Kev's here just to inspect it as well, and the problem lies here, where this corner of the swing arm, when it drops down a long, long way, it hits the edge of the frame. Stops it going any further. Now I knew about that, Kev, but I thought I might just get away with it. But it turns out I'm about a millimetre or two away from bolting on the shocks to the mount and swing arm. Bit of a pain. So the answer is I don't want to modify the frame because it's all powder coated. So instead we've marked off with a bit of tape where the interference is, and I've got to take the swing arm off yet again and cut this out and weld on a flat piece just there, so hopefully it'll clear it. Now it's not very far away from being perfect, maybe only 2 or 3 mil, but I may as well cut it off and give myself plenty of clearance just in case. Yeah.
Have the job right.
Yeah. So unfortunately I've now got to take it all off again, take it back to Jeff Haslam, the welder. He'll cut it out hopefully and whatever, or we may even actually just heat it all up with a blowtorch and whack it one, I don't know, but we'll see. Okay, so we're back at Jeff's again, and he's just ground off this area here, and now I've got a big hole, so to make a plate and weld it back on again. Okay, so there's the patch put on, and now you just got to grind that down and make it look pretty.
Dress it, make it look pretty.
Fantastic. Alright, and there it is, all nice and neat. Get back to the bike and see whether it all works, hopefully it does. And now here we are, back with the bike again, and a quick test fit to see if this little mod has worked, which it seems to have done. It allows the frame to drop down a hell of a long way, far more than actually than I need. And if we step away from the bike, we can see how low that swing arm now sits on the frame. Now, obviously it won't be that low when the weight of the bike is on the swing arm. The shocks will compress a wee bit and level things up. But I think overall it should give me about 2 inches more ground clearance, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. So we'll call that a success. And the next step is to have that swing arm powder coated again at SSS in Bingley, Yorkshire, which I'll do in a few days' time, and then the whole thing can go back together again for the last time, hopefully. As you can see, the swing arm's back on the bike. It's been powder coated at SSS. Various bits and bobs have been polished, including the battery box and this here, and yeah, it all went on okay. Bit fiddly though. It's not quite finished yet because I've got to refit the exhaust pipes and get a new link for the chain, which we have to break to get the swing arm off. But yeah, it looks okay. Sat on it, does feel a lot better, and I've definitely got a lot more ground clearance, at least I would say about 50 mil or 2 inches. Okay, so now I'm just going to sit on it and we'll see how the suspension moves. I mean, it's okay, it's very stiff anyway, but that's kind of how it'll look when I've got some weight on the bike. Yeah, sounds pretty good. A lot more ground clearance, so all good. It's now got this new chain on the back. Unfortunately, the old chain wasn't quite long enough now that I've modified the swing arm, so we had to pay for a new one. So pretty much now the bike's done, the whole back end's changed. Quite happy with that. I still want to make a new chain guard though, because the current one I'm not too happy with. But overall, yeah, it seems to be working okay. And so now it's all back together again. Let's start it up and we'll see what it sounds like with the pipes on it. So first of all, alarm off, ignition key in here. We've an odd place to put it, but there you go. Okay, next up we have the choke on, and then we must remember to push in these 2 decompressor buttons here, these little blue buttons on top of the heads, because this bike will struggle to start if you don't do that. This allows the pistons to turn over for the first few rotations a bit easier, and then they pop out when it fires up. Next up we have to turn on the fuel tap here, and it's on reserve at the moment, so it needs to go about halfway. There we go. And now hopefully, all things being well, we can start the bike. And off. And hello again, and here we are back at the bike shop, and at last my bike's finished, pretty much anyway. all the wiring's done. There's the Moto Gadget electronic brain, as it were, that's now squished between the seat and the oil tank. Oil tank's been refinished with a ceramic sort of anodizing rather than powder coated as it was. Yeah, so pretty much it's all done. Okay, so to start the bike then, what's going to have to happen is key in.
Key in.
Second position.
Second position.
Lots of lights there flashing, doing strange things.
And the dash comes on.
Okay, let's just see that now. That works last. Yay! So we've got tacho, speedo, and idiot lights. Okay, so to start the bike then, ignition on.
Yeah, ignition's on.
Fuel on, and
The compressor's
on.
Yeah.
No choke according to you, and then we've got these cool buttons here.
Yeah, nice new buttons.
Yay! However, there are one or two things to sort out, such as having some new bar ends, because these here are too small to fit, so that's something to do soon. And now here we are, back home again, and I just loaded up that video on my laptop. But now let's talk about something that I've not mentioned yet, and that's money and the cost of doing all these different mods to the bike. I've just got the receipt here from the bike shop, and I don't know if you can see that there, but basically the total cost of all the work I've had done at the bike shop was £1,065, which actually is a bit cheaper than I expected because they didn't charge me quite the full amount for the labour. But the majority of that amount is from parts, which we can't really do much about, and those parts are things like I needed a new chain when I modified the Swingarm, so that's 120. The Moto Gadget M unit was 245. The wiring kit was 53. The switches, which are very nice but very expensive at 120. And then you got little things like brake fluid, wiring consumables, obviously the labour, and it's also having a MOT today as well. And added to that, of course, it's not just that that's been done to the bike. I've also modified the swing arm, and that cost £70 for welding, and then had to get the swing arm re-powder coated, and so that was another £70. And then finally, of course, I also needed a new tacho and speedo for the bike, which was £140. And last of all, I made some new risers for the bike to bring back the bars an inch, and also modified the foot pegs to bring them back a wee bit as well. But that was all done at home, that was all homemade, so total cost was £0. And so if we add all it up, we come to a grand total of £1,445, which actually isn't too bad. I expected it to cost me around £2,000 when I began all these changes in December, so £1,445 is pretty good going. So overall then, that cost of £1,445 is pretty good if you ask me. The bike cost me £25,000, what, 17, 18 years ago, so spending this amount of money on it after all that time isn't too bad. And while modifying a bike that you already own isn't cheap, I think it can be a lot cheaper than going out and buying something like this, a 2018 Fat Bob in the new range. And let's see, that's currently around about £15,495 in Vivid Black. And actually, it's the one bike in the new range that I would consider buying brand new. But if I did do that, then I expect I can lose, what, £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 within the first year in depreciation, which is an awful lot more than I've spent on changing my bike and getting it just how I want for the next few years. So overall then, making changes to a bike you already own can be a lot cheaper than buying a brand new bike every few years. And on that note, thanks for watching and cheers.